Welcome back to the Topwater Podcast. I'm Justin. Bad luck vacation spilling over into the tournament that I'm currently in. So let's get to this. So, I went on vacation to do a little bit of striper fishing, and I gotta say, I don't know if you guys have ever had the pleasure of going on some sort of family outing or something to where you just have like an idea of how it's all supposed to play out, and none of it is how it all plays out. Just none of it. Not even a little. You can't even wake up on time. You know, it's like, it's one of those things. Like, everything that could go wrong is going wrong, and the only thing that's not going wrong is Burger King's Whopper, and that's because it's already wrong. It's already wrong. It's just that's the reason why it didn't go wrong, because it's already bad. It's already gone sour. But it was delicious. It was a delicious Whopper. I haven't had one in a while. Had one while I was down in Mountain Home. We went down to Norfolk Lake, and it was me, my brother, my dad, my stepmom, my sister, her husband, their kids, her sister, and her kid. So there was some children, some adults acting like kids, some kids that, frankly, never act like adults. So, but that's what kids are, you know. It's a pleasure to be around children when you don't have any, because you get the sense of, man, you almost get you almost get the sense that I see the joy that you could have from having kids, but the amount of headache, whew, man, those kids were running amok in the hotel room. I felt bad. I kind of felt bad because they were running up and down the hall screaming. It was like they were at home, you know. But also at the same time, kids are being kids, so it's like, I can't really, like, say that's, you know, that they were going to do it anyways, because kids will be kids and kids will do their own thing. But, you know, also at the same time, gotta rein those dudes in. Gotta rein them in a little bit. You know, just a little bit, you know. But it's like everybody was tired. But, so, start from the beginning. The beginning was kind of a nightmare. You know, supposed to get off work, head straight down there after work, so that way I could be up in the morning, do some striper fishing early in the morning, and then do striper fishing in the evening times. Okay. Well, setbacks happen. Wasn't able to go down there that night, so that meant I had to go the next day. Take care of whatever I had to take care of. My brother had to take care of what he had to take care of. And that just kind of meant that we didn't leave until the next day. No big deal. We still have the evening to fish. We still have the morning to fish. So we can still put in a little bit of fishing. Haven't done too much striper fishing. But I kind of figure we can at least put one in the boat. We can put something in the boat. That's kind of my thoughts behind this whole thing was, we could put something in the boat. You know, that's what the whole trip was about, was to figure things out. And when we got down there, we pulled up to the marina where my dad was at, and we talked to him, and they didn't figure anything out. They're like, we don't know. We don't know where these things are. We don't know where they're at. They said main lake points, so we've been around this area. We went somewhere else, didn't see anything there. So it was kind of a bust. It was kind of a bust whenever I first got there, and I just kind of got the feeling like, I hope this isn't the norm, but the exception. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, okay, well, you guys had a bad night. Okay. Well, you guys had a bad day. Okay. I get it. And then to come to find out, my sister's husband, the boat that he was borrowing, the trailer ended up getting a flat before they came down. So he had to change out the tires. And that became a whole ordeal. And so now he's driving on tires that aren't really meant for that trailer, so they're sitting a little bit low. But it's still, it's still feasible. It's still doing it. It's still making it. But it's not the right tires. So we have that in the bank. We have what I was dealing with in the bank. Then we go back to the hotel. We bust open the map and we start trying to figure things out. Get back to the hotel. One of the hotel's doors that we rented, it didn't work at all. So it wouldn't read a card, it wouldn't do anything. So we ended up having to when I got back, we ended up taking all the stuff out of that room and moving it to a different room. Then they got us our own room, a different room. So we switched rooms. And then after we switched rooms, our keys didn't work. And the reason why our keys didn't work is because they rented out the room that we were in. Luckily, we didn't have to move our stuff out because we were already there. It's like, you can't kick us out now. We already paid for the room. But that was another headache. And then, so then we finally get going again for that evening. Get something to eat. Naps are taken. Maps are read. And we're good to go. So we start to head out again. And after we head out, we get down to the water, and it's just beautiful out there. I gotta say, Norfolk Lake is a beautiful lake. I have a problem fishing it. I'm not good with deep water fishing. I'm not good with offshore fishing because it mainly takes being able to understand and read electronics, which we were reading them just fine, but we didn't really find anything because we didn't know where to necessarily look. We didn't have enough experience on the lake. It's one of those things. If we had a week, we could have taken the first taken, not tooken. Tooken's the wrong word. Tooken's not a word. Taken's the word. But we could have taken first couple of days and just trolled around. Just turned on the big motor and just trolled around and just looked for what we could see. Maybe drop a spoon or two or to figure it out. But we could have taken the first couple of weeks. Not couple of weeks, but first couple of days to figure things out. And figure out where the fish were. Figure out where they're hanging out. Figure out where the big balls of bait are. Where they're relating to. Because the bait's going to be there regardless of, what's going on. They're going to generally relate to the same thing over and over again. Just kind of like the fish. The fish are going to relate to the same thing over and over again. But we have to figure that out because we don't know that. Well, we go out that evening and we kind of just junk fish. And when you're trying to striper fish, there's two different ways to do it. You could either troll, which is essentially throwing your bait off to the side and just dragging it along behind you, which we didn't have the capabilities of doing that because we didn't have the rod holders in order to hold the rods. Also, to keep them spaced, because that's a big thing. Because when you're trolling, you have to be able to space your rods properly. Because if they're not spaced right, they'll just tangle up. And you also have to get them to run at different depths. So you have to have specialized equipment, which we didn't have specialized equipment. We just had bass equipment. Which that's not really that big of a deal if they're actively feeding. Which they weren't actively feeding. We were looking for schools in order to fire them up, maybe with some spoons or something like that. Maybe like a big swim bait. I had a Huddleston, a shad painted Huddleston, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe if I toss this thing around, maybe it might get bit. You know, there's a good chance. This is a pretty big meal. You know, you get a 30, 40-pound striper. It's probably going to want to go ahead and chomp on one of those deals. No. Not a bite. I mean, I think I did get a bite just because I had a underspin that had backlashed, and I just kind of let sit out there for a while dealing with the backlash, and then I reeled it in, and it had a little U-bend. So it looked like something clamped down on it and then spit it out. Probably clamped down on the weight and everything. It was like, nope, that's not right, and spit it out. Never got a hook into it, never got anything. So that was that was a good sign for me. I felt hope whenever I saw that. Well, I really felt a lot of hope whenever I saw that U-bend. I was like, oh, here we go. Because we were actually finding some fish. We were actually finding, like, nice arcs onto the graft. The problem is they were only, like, 1 or 2 arcs. So they might have been catfish. They could have been sturgeon. Well, maybe sturgeon. They could have been anything. Anything for all I know. But, you know, I figure at this point in time, especially this time of year, striper would be schooled up. So they should be not, you know, dispersing. They should be congregating together. So I kind of figured at this point in time, we are likely to see maybe one fish here and there, and then see a bunch of fish in one little area. And that's kind of what I was thinking. It's like, okay, they're probably going to be schooled up somewhere. We couldn't find a mega school that first night. And it was a beautiful night. It was a really beautiful night. But we couldn't connect. No matter what we did, we threw topwater, we threw stuff that was mid-range, we threw stuff that went low, we spooned. We tried everything. We tried everything to get these things into the boat, but it seemed like everything we did was never going to work. And it had that feeling of almost like dread. Like there was almost this feeling of dread. Like everything's going to go wrong. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention when I guess he's my brother-in-law. Yeah, brother-in-law. I just call him Brian. But my brother-in-law, he tried to start the boat, and it just wouldn't start. He tried for an hour, wouldn't start. They trolled around, came back, tried it again, still wouldn't start. One of the guys, the guy at the marina that was, I think it was the guy that was running it, may not have been the maintenance guy, but he ended up just cranking it. The way he cranked it up was he just took the throttle, put it forward, and just cranked it, just got it going. I mean, it revved up, and then he pulled it back, and it was run fine. But he was having some issues, and he was still having issues when we went out fishing the next day. It was still a pretty rough day as far as like whether or not the motor was going to start. There was a couple times to where it was like, but it seemed like the next day seemed to have a little bit more optimism behind it. Even though we got a lake start the next day, so we didn't get out onto the lake when we wanted to. So when we left, that's probably when the bite was actually dying down. So by the time we left the hotel, the bite was already dying down. Because we got there and we were putting in the boat while this other guy was pulling out the boat. And he gave us some great information, which it was kind of one of those, that was probably the most luckiest point of the whole entire trip, was right then and there when that guy was like giving us some info. Like, oh, here you go. Here's this info. And he told us what was up. And he showed us one of the stripers that he caught. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of a small one. It was still pretty decent size. I mean, I guess maybe not for striper. I mean, it was probably like 6-7 pounds. I mean, that's still a pretty decent sized fish. You know, you're going to get a couple of fillets off of that dude. And he's like, you're not breaking state records. And it's like, well, we're not worried about break state records. We just want to land something. We just want to hook something. Just once. Maybe we don't even care, how. Like, we just want to hook something. Let's just make this, whole trip worth it. But we get out there, and sure enough, I mean, we found some schools. We found some schools of some pretty decent lines. I assume they were striped bass. They could have been some wipers or something like that, but or hybrids. Wipers are kind of the what we called them. I mean, they're a white bass, striped bass hybrid, so wiper. Instead of a striper, it's a wiper. But yeah, so we ended up getting out there, and we found some schools, and it seemed like we were doing okay, but we just couldn't get anything to bite. I think there might have been a couple of times that might have got bit real early, but after like about 15, 20 minutes, all that just died down, and then it just became just back to the usual of, well, let's just troll around and try to find something. Let's just move around and try to find something. Oh, there's a school. Let's drop down and hurry up. And we ended up not being able to connect. And, it's nobody's fault, really. It's more or less if we would have known what we knew by the last day, the first day, we probably would have caught something by then. I'll say it like this. The next time we go down there is probably going to be much different than the time that we actually went down there this last time. Because, I mean, it was a bust. 100% bust. I mean, we didn't catch anything. We didn't see anything. I think we saw, like, one crappie. I was even advocating to go, like, maybe do a little bit of crappie fishing, but we ended up just trying to catch a striper or two. I don't know. It's still one of those things of I was trying to walk away with at least putting one fish in the boat, whether or not it was if it was a panfish, snagging a shad, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. But it was a bust. What can you do? I mean, other than just take the lessons learned and hopefully next time apply those lessons in order to not strike out. We struck out. It was a hard one to take, but that's kind of the learning experience. That's part of the learning curve. You can't just expect just to do a great job every single time you go out there fishing. So, that also being said, we ended up, like, the last half of the day, we ended up going swimming and tubing. See, my dad ended up renting a pontoon boat so that we could do some tubing, do some swimming, just some family fun stuff, just hanging out with the family. And we find a cove, we tuck back into it, we're jumping off the top of the thing, we're sliding down the slide, we're having a great time. It's fun, we're having a blast, and we decide, all right, let's start doing some tubing. So we pull the anchor up, we make sure we anchor off the bass boat, so that way it's not floating around just willy-nilly, not slamming into rocks or anything like that. Because it's fiberglass. You don't want a fiberglass boat just banging against rocks. You're going to sink that thing. It's going to shatter. That fiberglass is going to shatter. You don't want that. So we anchor off that thing, and then we start cruising around, with the tube. And, first it's my sister and her sister, which is, I guess, would be my sister too. I guess she's like, I assume, like, my sister's adopted, and that's her sister. So I guess it's my sister too. Just kind of like by proxy sort of thing. Like, I think that's more of a technicality thing. Either way, she's just family. But they're on the boat, and my sister's with her daughter out there too, and they're tubing, and they're going around, and they're just they're having fun, and then she gets bucked off, but the wind starts picking up, and the waves start picking up, and there's a couple more boats that are hanging out in the cove that we're in, and so So they were like, oh, yeah. Who's next? Justin, you want to go? And it's like, sure, why not? So I decided to go ahead and go out there. So I put on this life vest, which then after I put it on, I was like, I don't know if I necessarily want this life vest, I almost want like a good life vest, not this life vest, because it was old. It was an old life vest. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, it's going to do the trick, hopefully. It's foam. It's going to float, hopefully. But we get out there and we get onto the little raft, onto the little tube, and we start taking off. And we start getting into the wake, and we're just kind of doing this like slalom thing, inside the wake. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty fun. And then we start hitting the outside, and they turn. So we start coming around the outside, and I'm just about to just get shook off this thing, because we're hitting some waves, and it's just like, doot, 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 and I feel myself sliding off. So when I feel myself sliding off, I push myself back with my core, and I'm like, ugh, and just like tense up real hard against that slide, so that way I'm not falling off. And it's just like, and I'm just holding myself there. And then it slows down, and we start going. It's like boom, and we start hitting some waves, and then we hit a bigger wave, and we just launched. It seemed like 3 seconds in the air, 4 seconds in the air, something like that. It's probably just like a second or two, but still, it seems like boom. It was like one of those to where we got air. I knew we got air. It reminds me of whenever I was a kid and we would build ramps for our bikes. And you build a good one to where you shoot and you got good air. You're like, oh, I got air. And that's how it was. just shoop, and we got air. And that wasn't the only time that we got air. So we slam down. I bite my tongue. Like, it was bad. I couldn't tell how bad I bit my tongue, but it was bad enough to where I could tell that I was bleeding a little bit. But it wasn't severe. It wasn't like a severe bleed to where it's like I knew I was going to need stitches or anything. But I knew that I bit the crap out of my tongue. And I had like a couple of teeth marks right on the edge. It was like, oh my God, that was so bad. But it was one of those things to where I just kind of just like, all right, we're still in it. We're still going. And then like, we're still going. And, my niece is screaming, ah! And then at a certain point, she stops screaming. But that's because we're hitting these waves and we keep bouncing up and hitting down. And I'm having to like tighten my entire core in order to not like just like completely get shook off of this thing or completely just lose like breath or anything like that. So I keep tensing up and I'm like, every time we land down, I'm tensing up. So that way it's like I can take an impact. I don't think she knew like how to do that because I guess she was over there just flopping around. And at a certain point, she was saying, stop it. But I couldn't hear her, and she's right next to me. And there's no way to signal the boat because they're just hauling ass. And they were like, well, why didn't you do this? Like afterwards, why didn't you do this to say stop? Then it was like, there was no chance. If I let go to do this, I would have been gone. There's no way I could have signaled to you to stop. It's like it was one of those situations to where it's like, when are they going to stop? When? Because they weren't stopping. And at a certain point, I was like, God, like what's going on here? It's like eventually, I don't even know how we stopped. It was just one of those things of like, I was just holding on for fucking dear life at that point. Tubing became instantly unfun at that point. And it may be funny later, but it wasn't funny then. It was one of those things to where it's like we kept taking like shots. Like we kept hitting air and then taking shots and hitting air, then taking shots and whipping around and hitting air. And it's like, oh my God, I'm getting battered. Like, I mean, my shoulder is still like messed up, and this is it's not a week later yet, but my shoulder's still it's still pretty beat up from it. But it's just from taking those impacts just over and over and over again and just trying to hold on for dear life. Because you're not trying to get bucked off the thing because you don't want to get flung because, I mean, like, the only time to really get off of there is whenever you, like, come around that curve and you start catching up with the boat and you start slowing down. And that is your only time to, like, let go. Like, that is the only time to let go. Other than that, you better just hang on. I can't. See, there's a reason why I like kayaking. You don't have that. You don't have that. You don't have any of that. You have your regular old, just simple, just paddle. I'm just paddling. That's all you get. That's all it is. Whereas, like, that was rough. That was a rough ride. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, that was rough. And after I got done with that, I was like, nope, I'm not doing that again. I can't believe that we got so much air. I mean, there's so many times to where it was like, here we go. We're going to hit this and we're going soaring. And yep. I mean, we had to catch air like good, like 9 or 10 times, like good air, like decent air. Enough air to where I was like, oh, we could flip. Like there was enough room to kind of one way or the other to where we were like, you know, like to where we actually caught some air. Like, and I could tell that we caught air too, because it's like you could see, like, you couldn't see the back end of the boat, and then you come up and you're like, oh yeah, we can see the back end of the boat just fine, and right back down. Just, and it's just like, oh my, ugh. We were getting beat up so bad on that one. And, yeah. That sucked. It was fun for a second, but it sucked for the majority of the time. It was like willingly getting kicked in the arms, in the body. It's just like, you're like, shit. Ow. Quit it. Quit kicking me. But, so, they eventually stopped. My turn was over. I flopped off. I was like, yeah, bloosh. Into the water. Bloosh. And after I did that, swim back to the boat, then it was my stepmom's turn, and somebody else went, and, there was a couple people that went, and we started going back to the bass boat in order to check on the bass boat, and somebody's like, hey, this thing's leaning pretty hard. And my dad was like, well, the guys are on one side. And so we kind of moved to the other side, and it didn't really help. And we were like, oh, we're taking on water. This pontoon boat is it's starting to sink. Like we're actually legitimately sinking right now, because the back end, the back quarter, so if it's like this, it was actually shifted like that. So we were kind of like this. And if this is the water right here, that was the back end of the boat. So the back end of the boat was kind of underwater at that point. And so at that point, we just went abandon ship, all the kids off, and as many people as we can get off this boat as possible, we'll get off this boat. All the equipment, everything that we have, we're shoving it onto the bass boat. The bass boat wasn't ready to carry all that weight, but, we weren't trying, he wasn't trying to go, like, really, really fast. But it was essentially one of those things to where it's like, yeah, there's a couple of bodies that need to go onto that boat, and they needed to go there. So we got all the kids off, and we got most of the ladies off, and Yulia's the only person that wasn't on the other boat as far as the women go. But me, my brother, my dad, and Yulia were stuck on the pontoon boat. So this thing's sinking, and we're stuck on this boat because there's not enough room on the other boat for us to go. So we're on here, and so me, my brother, and Yulia all sit on the front end to weigh it down. So we're leaning as far as we can to the one side on the furthest corner that's out of the water. So we're trying to act as a counterweight to the water that came in or is still coming in, because we don't know how full this thing is at this point. And all we know is it's sinking. So Dad called the guy that he rented the boat from, and he said that he's going to meet us. So he's going to start heading our way. We told him where we were, and we were going to start heading his way. And he told us, don't go fast, because all it's going to do is just cause it to keep tipping. So we're idling and we're going as fast as we can, but it's pretty much just like an idle run. And we're idling to where we're going. It's not very fast at all. And yeah, that thing starting to tip. Like, by the time we got off the boat, the front end was out of the water. The front left end was out of the water. The complete, like, pontoon part was up off the water at that point when the guy took over the boat, which he ended up happening to beach the boat, mind you. So it was bad enough to where at a certain point, that pontoon, and we were seeing it, it was almost running at like I think it was running right around like a 25, 30 degree angle. Just like, that's how it was leaning. Like, as the guy was running it, he would prop the motor, and then he would stand off and lean off the side. So he was leaning off the side of the pontoon, so that way he could put as much weight on the opposite end as he could, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. He ended up having to get another pontoon to come out there, and then strap the two pontoons together, and then tow it back. That was the only way that he could get it back without like completely having to salvage it. And I don't want to like discredit the people, and I do want to say that it wasn't their fault. The people that had it before us ran it up on some rocks and ended up needing to be repaired. Well, they welded it, and they thought that there wasn't any leaks. They took it out. Seemed that everything was fine. We got it, and I think it probably... This is my guess, is that when we took it out, we stressed it the way that they didn't stress it, because we were tubing. So, we're talking about making turns, because everything was fine before we started tubing. It wasn't sinking before we started tubing. It started sinking after we started tubing. So what I think probably happened was, because of the force of us, like, making those maneuvers into the boat, that's what probably caused the weld to fail. And because the weld failed, then it started taking on water, and, there she wrote. But I do want to say, and I want to make sure that this is clear, that the people who rented us the boat, they were the salt of the earth, nice people. They were wonderful people. Very, very wonderful people. And I want to make that abundantly clear, is that they were absolutely wonderful to us. And they're very accommodating. They took every precaution that they could in an emergency situation, and they did the right thing. And they did an excellent job, and I want to make sure that I do point that out, that just because there was some sort of malfunction or there was some sort of failure isn't necessarily a failure on their part, but it was something that did happen. And you can't cover up the truth, but also at the same time, you can't necessarily just put blame onto somebody. They rented us something that they thought was seaworthy, and that they had confidence in. So there wasn't anything to suggest that it was going to malfunction when we got it, but it did. So because it malfunctioned, then we were put in a situation, and they took correct action. They took appropriate action. They got out there as quick as they could to recover everybody out of the boat and to get everybody out of the boat as quick as possible. Luckily, we already had a bass boat, because if we didn't have that bass boat, most likely what we would have done is we would have just stayed in that cove. We probably wouldn't have left that cove if it was just if we didn't have the bass boat in order to offload people into. Like that would have been the only reason why we wouldn't have moved from that spot, just because from that there was docks there. We could have like gone over there and like shoved people onto the dock, and shoved the kids onto the dock, got everybody off the boat. But luckily we had a bass boat with us, so we were able to offload everybody. And after we did that, that's when we started making the trek back, which, I mean, it wasn't like a scary trip. It wasn't like we gonna tip? Oh, I mean, also you have to think Norfolk Lake is like the majority. There's a lot of it that's like 100 foot deep. So if we would have tipped, it would have just flung us. We are all wearing life jackets anyways, so it would have just flung us, and then we would have just floated there, or whatever. I mean, it wasn't too rough to where you wouldn't be able to manage it as a person just bobbing in the water, So, and also, it wasn't dark. It wasn't close to being dark. We could have swam to shore if that was really the case. If like, oh man, we've capsized and now we need to swim to shore. I don't think that would have been that big of an issue. But it was it was an interesting trip. Like, I mean, thankfully, nothing really bad happened. And it was just one of those trips to where it really just kind of makes you go, okay, no matter how hard or how well you plan, it can all just go awry. And I think about that, and I think that whenever you have something that does go awry, that's when you need to stay calm as possible. And in that situation, everybody stayed calm. Everybody was cool. Nobody was panicking. We recognized what was going on. Hey, let's shove everybody over to the bass boat. And I knew as soon as we shoved everybody over to the bass boat, it was almost like, there was almost like an ease. Like, in a way, there was kind of an excitement, because I knew that this was dangerous. But at the same time, I felt at ease because I knew that the kids were going to be okay. All the kids that were with us, they're going to be fine. They're in the bass boat. They're going to be fine. They're not on the sinking ship. We got everything off. Okay. All right. We're good. Let's go. And it was an interesting thing. It was interesting. But that's a weird one to wrap your head around, especially like the fact that, it's like, I don't think anything bad is going to happen from this. But it could happen. And if it's going to happen to anybody, it's going to happen to us. So, in a way, it was almost a calming. It was almost calming to know that it's like, okay, I'm the one that's we're putting our butts on the line here. It's us that's putting our butts on the line, not anybody else. It's us. So it was fun. The trip from hell. It was fun. Well, man, it's already 45 minutes into this. I didn't even get into my tournament fishing to tell you how that went. Well, I guess you're going to have to stay tuned for the next episode to figure out how that went. Because the bad luck sure did spill on over. It didn't just stay put. It went ahead and just said, "Hi, I'm back again." So, join me next time. We're going to go to Fellows Lake and we're going to talk about the, the fish that I didn't catch, I guess is the best way to put it. You're gonna hear all about it. You're gonna figure out. You're gonna find out that I am really trying to learn a new lake, and learning a new lake is it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm supposed to be an expert at this, and I just don't know what I'm doing. I can't even hook fish. Apparently, I can't even set the hook. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun. But, yeah. So, you got guys and gals, just, get out there and go fishing. Because, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have those days to where nothing goes right. You're going to have those days to where everything goes wrong. And that's why, I preach preparation. If you're not ready to be blindsided by a random event, then, you should be ready for that. You should be ready to deal with whatever event that comes along your way. Whether it be all of a sudden your kayak starts taking on water, your boat starts taking on water, your pontoon starts taking on water, whatever it might be prepared for that. Be prepared the fact that you may have to get into the drink and then swim a half mile or a quarter mile or whatever, how many miles it is, back to shore. You may be stuck in an area to where you're just getting walloped by, waves. Be prepared for the times that are going to happen when they're unexpected. That's why you need a life jacket. That's why you need a whistle. That's why you need, possibly a flare gun. That's why you need some of these things. There's a reason, there's a rhyme and a reason for these things. It's not just arbitrary stuff. Safety equipment isn't arbitrary. The thing is with safety equipment, it's one of those things that you should, hopefully, you never have to use it. So, the best case scenario is that you never have to use your safety equipment. That you never have to use your PFD, that you never have to use your whistle, that you never have to use a flare, you never have to use, your dry bag with your warm clothes in it with the towel. You never have to use any of that stuff. You never have to start a fire in order to keep yourself warm. You never have to do those sorts of things. But if you have to do it once, that one time could mean the difference between you being able to do it again. It's a good idea to be prepared for the worst. I know I try to be prepared. I try to be prepared as much as possible. and I hope you guys are prepared. And, you know, hopefully these, and I also want to say it like this. Even though that this is kind of in a way, like, I don't want to say a bitch fest, but it's definitely complaining. Even though this is me complaining, and maybe it is a bitch fest, but let's tomato on this one. There's going to come a point in time here in the next few months to where this is going to become really funny to me. This is going to become a very hilarious story. But at this point, it's kind of like, But at a certain point, this story is going to become funny. And it's going to become hilarious. Just remember that. The worst times possible are sometimes the funniest shit that can happen to you. So, on that, I'll see you out on the water. Peace.